I never thought I'd see what I saw. Not in a church. Not in a place that claimed to serve God. My name doesn't matter. What matters is what I've seen and what I once believed. I grew up in a small African town where church wasn't just part of life. It was life. Every Sunday, we'd wake up before sunrise, polish our shoes, and walk miles just to sit in wooden pews and listen to the word. I loved it. I loved the singing, the clapping, the way the pastor's voice filled the room like thunder from heaven. So when I became older and started attending one of the biggest churches in the city, I felt like I had finally found my place. The pastor, everyone called him Prophet Emmanuel, was different. He didn't preach like the others. His voice was soft, but when he prayed, people fainted. When he touched someone's head, they fell to the floor. He said he carried the spirit of fire, and I believed him. I believed every word he said, every miracle I saw. People said he could heal the blind. Some claimed he brought a dead man back to life. I never saw that happen. But when you are in that crowd, when hundreds of voices shout, "Man of God," you start to believe in anything. One Sunday, after service, he announced something new. He said he wanted to bless his followers in a special way. He called it the washing of feet. He said it was a holy cleansing, a way for him to remove curses and poverty from people's lives. He said, "When I wash your feet, your path will open." Everyone clapped. Women cried. Some fell on their knees, thanking God for remembering them. But something about it made me curious. Why the feet? Why did he insist that only he could perform it? That night, I stayed behind after most people had gone. I helped the ushers clean the hall. That's how close I was to the church. As I packed chairs, I noticed the prophet speaking quietly to 3 men I'd never seen before. They were dressed in black suits, no Bibles, no smiles, just cold faces. They followed him to the back room, the one he never allowed anyone else to enter. I heard the door click shut. I didn't think much of it until a few minutes later, I smelled something strange, like burning herbs and something metallic, like blood. It was faint, but it didn't belong in a church. I stood there frozen, broom in hand, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was incense, I told myself, but deep down, something inside me whispered, "No, this is wrong." That next Sunday came, the first foot washing service. People lined up outside the church gates before sunrise, mothers with their children, men in suits, old women in white clothes. Everyone came with bottles of water, salt, and oil, just as the prophet had instructed. I stood close to the front, trying to get a clear view. The prophet walked in dressed in pure white. He smiled softly, holding a golden bowl filled with clear water. The crowd went silent. "Today, I wash away your pain. I wash away your enemies," he said. The first woman stepped forward trembling. He dipped his hand into the bowl, poured the water on her feet, and whispered words I could not understand. She fell to the ground, screaming and crying. People shouted, "Power! Power of the Holy Spirit!" But something didn't sit right with me. His lips weren't moving like he was praying. It was more like chanting. He washed the next man's feet, and the same thing happened. The man fell flat, shaking as if struck by lightning. That smell returned again. That same sharp, metallic scent from the back room. But there were no candles burning this time. It was coming from the water. My chest tightened. My hands began to sweat. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't move. Then something strange happened. The prophet looked up suddenly, straight into my eyes, across the crowd. It was like he knew I had noticed. He smiled, not warmly, not like a man of God, but like someone who knew a secret about me. After the service, when everyone had gone home, he called me aside. "My son," he said softly, "I see your spirit is strong. Come see me tomorrow. I want you to help me with something special." His hand rested on my shoulder, heavy and cold. I tried to smile, but inside my heart was pounding. That night, I didn't sleep. His words replayed in my head, "Help me with something special." Was this an honor or a trap? I didn't know then, but saying yes would change everything I believed about God, power, and the church itself.
I still remember that night like it happened yesterday. The sky was cloudless, the air heavy and still. Even the street dogs were quiet. I didn't know if I was walking toward a blessing or a curse, but either way, I knew I couldn't turn back. Prophet Emmanuel had told me to come after evening prayers, and in our church, when the prophet called, you went, no questions asked. When I arrived, the main hall was empty. The lights were dim, and the faint smell of incense lingered in the air. The ushers were gone. Only one of his guards stood by the door to the prophet's private chamber, the same door that was always locked during services. "Go in," he said. His face was blank, voice hollow. I pushed the door open. Inside, the room looked nothing like a pastor's office. The walls were lined with dark curtains. There was no cross, no Bible, no picture of Jesus, just strange symbols drawn on pieces of white cloth hanging from the ceiling. Candles flickered on a small wooden table in the center, their light trembling in the shadows. Prophet Emmanuel sat behind the table, dressed in white, his eyes closed. In front of him was a bowl, the same golden bowl he used during the washing of feet, but this time, the water inside wasn't clear. It was dark, like something had been mixed into it. He didn't look up when I walked in. He just said, "Lock the door." My hand shook as I turned the key. Then he opened his eyes. His stare was piercing, the kind that makes you feel small, like he could see straight through your skin into your thoughts. "You want to serve God, don't you?" he asked. "Yes, Prophet," I said quietly. He nodded slowly. "And you want to carry power, to heal, to see visions?" "Yes, Prophet." He smiled, leaning forward. "Power is not free, my son. Every man of God you see on this earth, the ones who truly move mountains, they all pay a price. Are you ready to pay yours?" I hesitated. My mouth felt dry. What kind of price? He leaned back in his chair, his voice dropping low. "Sacrifice. That is the only way to open your spiritual eyes, the only way to be used by God mightily." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small bottle filled with thick red oil. The candlelight made it shimmer like blood. "This oil," he said, "is sacred. Before every service, I anoint the water with it. That's why the power flows through me when I wash the people's feet. Their pain leaves them and enters me. I carry their burdens, and in return, God lifts me higher." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something about that oil, the smell, the color, the way he handled it, it didn't feel holy. He stood and handed me the bottle. "Take it, smell it." I opened it slowly. The stench hit me immediately. Metallic, bitter, rotten. I almost gagged. "What is this?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "That is the price of power." I froze. "Prophet, I don't understand." "You will," he said, "soon." Then he asked me to kneel. I obeyed. My knees touched the cold floor as he placed his hand on my head. His palm felt hot, almost burning. He began to pray, but it wasn't like any prayer I'd ever heard. The words weren't in English or any language I recognized. They sounded ancient, heavy, almost like chanting. As he spoke, I felt dizzy. My body started shaking. It was as if the air around me grew thicker, pressing against my skin. The candles flickered wildly, their flames stretching towards us. Then, without warning, he took the bowl, the one with the dark liquid, and placed it before me. "Put your hand in," he said. "Prophet?" "Do it." I hesitated, but his eyes hardened. I obeyed. The moment my fingers touched the water, a shock went through my arm. I pulled back with a gasp. My heart raced. The prophet didn't flinch. He just smiled. "Now," he said, "you are connected." He stood and looked down at me like a king addressing his servant. "You are no longer just a follower. You are my son in the spirit. From today, you will serve beside me. You will see things others cannot." I nodded weakly, my hand still tingling. "Tomorrow," he said, "you will begin your training, and soon you will take part in the true ritual of power." Then he placed a finger over his lips. "But tell no one, not your family, not the other pastors, not even your mother. This is sacred." I left the room trembling. Outside, the night air felt cold against my skin, but my hand, the one that touched the water, still burned. I tried washing it, but the tingling wouldn't stop. As I walked home under the moonlight, I told myself it was all part of God's plan, that Prophet Emmanuel was a man of God, that maybe the strange things I saw were just spiritual. But deep inside, I knew something had changed. I had crossed a line, and whatever I had just touched, it wasn't holy.
When the prophets told me to sit, the room went strangely quiet. I could hear the faint crackle of candles and the drip of water echoing off the tiled walls. It was just the two of us now. The others had left, or maybe they'd been told to leave. He smiled at me, that calm, fatherly smile that used to make me feel safe. "Relax," he said softly. "This is your moment of deliverance." He reached for a silver basin, setting it in front of me. I noticed something odd. The water wasn't clear. It looked dark, almost like it had been mixed with ashes or some kind of oil. There was also a smell, not perfume, not soap, something earthy, like damp soil and rusted metal. I hesitated. "Man of God," I whispered, "what kind of water is that?" He chuckled, still not looking up. "Holy water," he said, "but it has to be blessed the right way. Some blessings are hidden from the unready." Then, under his breath, he started mumbling something, not in English, not even in the usual prayer tone. The language was rough and low, like whispers of a storm. I couldn't understand the words, but they made my skin crawl. He dipped his hands in the basin, eyes closed. For a moment, the candles flickered. I thought maybe the wind had come through the window, but there was no window. He motioned for my feet. "Put them in," he said. I froze. Every instinct told me no. My chest tightened. Something inside me screamed, "Don't do it." But I was scared. Scared to disrespect him, scared of what would happen if I didn't obey. Everyone in the church talked about how powerful he was, how he could heal the blind and command spirits. I didn't want to anger someone like that. So I obeyed. I dipped my feet into the basin. The water was warm, too warm, like it had just been heated, though I hadn't seen any steam. The moment my skin touched it, a strange tingling shot up my legs. It wasn't pain, but it wasn't comfort either. It was like my body was reacting to something unnatural.
The prophet's chanting grew louder. His hands moved in slow, deliberate circles over the water, almost like he was stirring something invisible. I leaned forward, unable to look away, and that's when I saw it. My reflection in the water wasn't mine. It looked like me, but older. My eyes were completely black. My mouth was twisted into something between a smile and a scream. I gasped and pulled my feet out. The prophet's head snapped up. "Why did you stop?" he demanded. I saw something," I stammered. "That wasn't me." His eyes narrowed. "That's your past self, the part of you that still carries darkness. You must let it die. If you pull away, the cleansing won't work." My voice trembled. "I don't understand." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You don't need to. Just trust the process. I've done this hundreds of times." But something about the way he said it chilled me. Hundreds of times. How many people had sat where I was sitting, feet dipped in this same blackened water, seeing faces that weren't theirs? He pressed his hand against my forehead and whispered another word. I didn't recognize it, but it made the back of my neck sting. My head spun. I felt dizzy, almost detached from my own body. And then I heard it, a voice, not his, not mine. It came from the water, a whisper so faint I thought I was imagining it. "Don't let him finish." I jerked back, nearly spilling the basin. The prophet's expression changed instantly. His calm mask slipped. "What did you hear?" he barked. I shook my head, too terrified to speak. He grabbed my wrist hard and said, "You must not resist the calling. This is how salvation works. Through the washing, the old dies and the new is reborn." But there was nothing holy about his grip. His fingers dug into my skin, leaving marks. His eyes had gone glassy, unblinking. I pushed his hand away and stood up. "I think I've had enough," I said. My voice was shaking, but I forced the words out. He stood too, towering over me. "Once you begin the ritual, you don't leave it undone. You don't want to walk around half cleansed. That invites things." The way he said "things" made my stomach turn. Then he smiled again, but this time it wasn't warm, it was cold. "Sit back down," he said softly, "or what's following you now won't leave." I don't remember deciding to run. My body just moved. I grabbed my shoes and bolted for the door. The prophet shouted something behind me, words I didn't understand, but I didn't look back. The hallway outside was empty and silent. Every step I took echoed like thunder. When I reached the front door, it wouldn't open. At first, it was like someone was holding it shut from the other side. Then suddenly, click, it opened. I stumbled out into the night air, gasping. The church behind me was completely still, but for the first time, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Above the doorframe, carved into the wood, were strange symbols. Symbols that looked a lot like the ones he'd drawn on the floor earlier. I ran until I couldn't breathe. But even when I got home, the smell of that water, that earthy metallic scent, still clung to me. I scrubbed my feet for hours. Still, I felt like something was following me.
That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the basin, the water, the face, those black eyes staring back at me like they were alive. I kept hearing that whisper in my head, "Don't let him finish." It was soft, almost kind, but it left a ringing in my ears that wouldn't stop. I told myself it was just fear, just my imagination. I tried praying over and over until my throat hurt. But the more I prayed, the heavier the room felt. Like something unseen was pressing down on me. Around 2 a.m., I heard a soft knock on my door. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then it came again. 3 knocks, slow, deliberate. I froze in bed, my heart pounding. I lived alone. "Who's there?" I called out. No answer. The knocking stopped. I waited, holding my breath, listening for footsteps. Nothing. Then, just as I started to relax, I heard water dripping. I turned toward my bathroom. The tap was off, but I could still hear it. Drip, drip, drip. My whole body went cold. I stood up and crept toward the sound. The light in the bathroom was flickering. And there, in the sink, was water. Not clear water, dark, murky water, the same color as the basin from the church. I backed away slowly, whispering prayers. "In the name of Jesus!" The light went out. I ran to grab my phone, fumbling to turn on the flashlight. When the beam hit the sink again, it was empty. No water, nothing. But the smell was still there. That same earthy, metallic smell. I stayed up the rest of the night, too scared to even blink. The next morning, I went back to church. Not to his church, never again. I went to a small one near the market, a place I hadn't been to in years. I sat at the back, quiet, while the pastor preached about discernment and false prophets. It was like the sermon was meant for me. After service, I pulled the pastor aside and told him everything. The foot washing, the dark water, the reflection, the voice. I didn't leave anything out. He listened without interrupting, nodding slowly. When he finished, he sighed and said, "You've been initiated, my child, whether you knew it or not." "Initiated?" I asked. "Into what?" He looked at me, his eyes full of concern. He said, "Some prophets don't draw their power from God. They mix the holy with the unholy. That foot washing wasn't cleansing, it was a covenant. He marked you. That's why you keep smelling the water. That's why you are not at peace." My knees almost gave out. "What do I do?" I whispered. He said, "You need deliverance, and you must not go back there. Whatever spirit he works with will fight to bring you back." We started a prayer session right there in his small office. He and 2 elders prayed for me, hands on my shoulders. I closed my eyes, trying to focus, but as they prayed, something strange began happening. My body felt hot, like fire under my skin. I started shaking uncontrollably. The pastor's voice grew louder. "Every spirit that entered through deception, come out in Jesus' name." I felt something rise up in me, like a wave of anger that wasn't mine. My hands clenched on their own, my teeth ground together. Then, from deep inside, a voice spoke through me, hoarse and angry. "She belongs to him." I gasped. The elders didn't stop. They prayed louder. "In the name of Jesus, she belongs to no one but God." I felt something teared inside me, like a cord snapping. I screamed, the sound raw and painful. Then, suddenly, silence. When I opened my eyes, I was on the floor, trembling, drenched in sweat. The pastor knelt beside me, breathing hard but smiling faintly. He said quietly, "It's broken. Whatever hold he had, it's broken." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But that night, when I went home, I realized something. The smell was gone, yes, but the whisper wasn't. It came back just before I fell asleep. Do you really think he'll let you go? The next few days were worse. Everywhere I went, I saw signs of him. Flyers for his revival meetings. People talking about how the man of God healed someone new. One evening, I walked past a bus stop and saw his face on a poster. Smiling, holding a Bible. The words, "Come and receive your cleansing." I wanted to tear it down, but my hands were shaking. I turned to leave, and that's when I saw him. Across the road, standing by a street lamp, watching me. He didn't move. He didn't smile. Just stared. My heart stopped. I blinked, and he was gone. I told myself it couldn't be real. Maybe it was someone who looked like him. But deep down, I knew better. That night, I dreamed of the basin again. But this time, it wasn't water inside. It was blood. And in the reflection, I didn't see myself. I saw him.
The morning after that dream, I woke up drenched in sweat. My sheets were soaked, and the air in my room felt thick, heavy almost, humid, like I'd been sleeping in a steam room. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to steady my breathing. I told myself it was just a nightmare, just stress from everything that had happened. But then I looked down. There were wet footprints on my floor. They started near my bed and led toward the door. Bare, human prints, still damp. I froze. I hadn't left my bed all night. I checked my feet. They were dry. The water drops shimmered faintly before fading away like they'd been soaked up by something unseen. That's when I knew this wasn't over. I couldn't go to the police. What would I even say? A prophet performed a dark ritual on me and now water follows me around? They'd think I was insane. So, I did what most desperate people do. I went online. I typed everything I could remember. Prophet, black water, foot washing, demonic rituals. Most results were harmless. Sermons, church practices, a few blog posts warning about fake pastors. But then I found a forum thread titled, "The Water That Binds." The first post read, "If you've ever had your feet washed by a man claiming to bless you with cleansing water, leave immediately. It's not cleansing, it's sealing." I scrolled further. People were sharing stories, real ones. One woman wrote about a prophet who washed her feet and told her she'd prosper. But afterward, every time she dreamt, she saw herself in strange rivers, surrounded by people chanting in a language she didn't understand. Another man said he felt his health declining soon after, and that the prophet demanded he return for strength renewal. Every story had one thing in common. The ritual tied them to the prophet. And that's when the truth hit me. The water wasn't meant to cleanse, it was meant to connect. I went cold all over. That's why he said, if you leave it undone, it invites things. He wasn't warning me out of concern. He was warning me because the ritual wasn't finished. I scrolled to the bottom of the thread. One comment stood out from someone who claimed to have been a former church worker under a man of God who did the same thing. He draws power from the fear of others,
When he washes their feet, he prays to something beneath the water. It's not God. The liquid isn't holy. It's the blood of sacrifices mixed with oil. The washing marks the person spiritually, a form of control. Some call it the tether. Once marked, you see him in your dreams until you break the bond. I sat staring at the screen, my hands shaking. I needed proof. I needed to know if it was true. The next Sunday, I decided to go back. Not to him, but near his church. I sat in a taxi, parked across the street, windows tinted, watching as people streamed in. Women in bright dresses, men in suits, everyone smiling, carrying towels and bottles of oil. I felt sick. I noticed his aides carrying buckets covered with cloth, heading inside through a side door. One of them glanced around before disappearing in. I knew I shouldn't go closer, but something pulled me. I stepped out of the taxi and walked slowly towards the back of the building, staying in the shadows. From there, I could hear faint chanting, not the joyful kind, low, repetitive. I peeked through a small side window. What I saw made my blood run cold. The prophet was kneeling before a large bowl much bigger than the one he used on me. Around him were candles arranged in a circle, and the floor had markings drawn in white chalk, symbols that looked ancient. Beside the bowl were items, feathers, small bones, and what looked like folded photos of people. My stomach turned when I realized one of those faces was mine. He was chanting again, that same language. Every few seconds, he dipped his fingers into the bowl and sprinkled the water around, whispering something I couldn't make out. Then he said my name. Clear, loud. I froze. My heart was racing so hard I thought it would burst. He said it again, louder this time, and the water in the bowl rippled. I covered my mouth, terrified he'd somehow sense me. I slowly backed away, trying not to make a sound, but my shoe brushed against a stone. It rolled. The noise echoed. He stopped chanting. His head turned sharply towards the window. For a split second, our eyes met. The look on his face wasn't shock. It was rage. I ran. I didn't look back. I ran through the dusty lot, past the cars, into the street. People must have thought I was crazy sprinting like that, but I didn't care. By the time I reached home, my body was shaking so hard I couldn't even hold my keys. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow felt alive. Then, around 3 a.m., my phone started ringing. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering, voice trembling. Hello? Silence. Then, softly, you shouldn't have come back. My blood ran cold. It was his voice. I dropped the phone, heart hammering. The line went dead. And then I heard it again. Water dripping. I turned slowly. My feet were wet. There was a puddle forming beneath me.
The puddle beneath me grew, inch by inch, even though I hadn't spilled anything. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come out. I stared at the water, trembling. It reflected the dim light from my bedside lamp, but something was off. The surface shimmered unnaturally, almost like it had movement of its own. Shadows swirled within it. And then I saw it. A pair of feet, not mine. They were pressed against the underside of the water, moving slowly, deliberately. The skin was dark, but the shape was wrong, elongated, almost skeletal. I froze. My mind screamed to run, but my legs were rooted to the floor. The footsteps creaked. The sound came from nowhere and everywhere at once. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I remembered the forum post. Once marked, you see him in your dreams until you break the bond. It wasn't a dream. I grabbed my blanket, wrapping it around me like armor. I whispered a prayer, any prayer I could remember from my childhood. The water quivered like a living thing, as if mocking my words. Then a voice, low, soft, commanding, whispered my name again. You took what wasn't yours. I dropped to the floor, crawling backward, eyes locked on the moving water. My phone vibrated on the bed, buzzing frantically. I grabbed it, hands shaking. Unknown number again. I answered. You cannot run, he said. Calm now, almost gentle. The bond is not broken. Please leave me alone. I won't go back. I won't. You cannot escape what you accepted, he interrupted. The line went dead. I threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. The water grew larger, now spreading across the floor like it had a mind of its own. I could hear whispers in it, hundreds of voices, all overlapping, all speaking at once, words I couldn't understand, chanting my name over and over. I realized then the truth. The ritual wasn't just a ceremony, it was a tether. Every foot I washed, every blessing I performed, I had bound myself to him, to his power. And the moment I tried to leave, that bond started pulling me back. Fear gripped me, sharper than anything I had ever felt. I wanted to run, but where could I go? Even outside, the city felt different, darker, heavier, like something was following me, slipping through every shadow. I spent the night sitting in the corner, blanket over my head, whispering every prayer I knew. Dawn crept in, and the water receded slowly, leaving wet footprints that disappeared as mysteriously as they came. I thought I was safe, but I wasn't. Days passed, and strange things started happening everywhere I went. Mirrors cracked when I looked into them, lights flickered, shadows moved when no one was there. Every time I tried to pray, my words came out garbled, as if something inside me resisted. I could feel the power I had gained from washing those feet, the strange heat, the rush of energy, but now it was a curse. Every time I tried to help someone, a tiny part of them faltered. Illness, accidents,
arguments. I couldn't control it, and I realized something horrifying. It wasn't just my guilt. It was him. Prophet Emmanuel. Even miles away, he was still controlling it. Every blessing I had performed, every miracle I had helped enact, it all fed him, strengthened him, and chained me tighter. I couldn't go back. Not to him, not to the church. I had to break the tether myself. But how? I had no idea. And every step I took felt like I was walking through water. Heavy, pulling me backward, dragging me towards something I didn't want to face. That night, I decided to confront it. I lit candles in my room, lined them around the puddle that appeared again on the floor. I whispered every scripture I could remember. I called on every power I knew, God, angels, saints, anything that could hear me. The water roared like a living beast. Shadows twisted violently, forming shapes, hands, faces, eyes, all reaching for me. I screamed, but I didn't move. I planted my feet, gritting my teeth, repeating the words over and over. Hours passed. I don't know how long. My arms ached from holding the prayers out loud. My throat burned. My hands were raw from clutching the Bible so tightly. Then slowly, silence. The water receded. The shadows disappeared. The room was still. I fell to the floor, sobbing, exhausted beyond belief. I knew the bond wasn't completely broken, but for the first time, I felt hope. I could fight. I could survive. And I made a promise to myself. Never again would I be used. Never again would I let the hunger for power blind me.
Weeks passed after that night. I tried to rebuild my life, but it felt like I was walking on a tightrope stretched across darkness. Every time I thought I was safe, I felt it, a pressure in my chest, a whisper in my ear, a shadow moving in the corner of my vision. Then, one evening, my phone rang, unknown number. My stomach sank before I even answered. "Do you think you can leave me?" The voice was calm, cooled, and sharp, cutting through my chest like ice. "You are mine. Every blessing you touched, every miracle you helped perform, it belongs to me, and you will return." I slammed the phone down, my hands shaking violently. I had to face this. I couldn't hide forever. The next day, I made my way back to the city where Prophet Emmanuel's church stood, not to rejoin, but to confront him. I needed answers. I needed closure. I needed freedom. I arrived just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows over the church. It looked the same, majestic, powerful, magnetic. Inside, the air was thick with incense. The low hum of voices chanting filled the large hall. I felt it immediately, that same energy that had once drawn me in. It tugged at me, almost suffocating. I was trembling, but I walked in. The congregation barely noticed me, absorbed in their rituals. I spotted him at the altar, Prophet Emmanuel, radiating authority, his eyes scanning the room, sharp and piercing. He saw me. A slow smile crept across his face. "I wondered when you would come," he said, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic. "You cannot hide from what you have accepted. You are mine, even if you try to deny it." "No," I said, my voice cracking. "I am not yours. I will not be part of this anymore. I will not steal from people for your power. I will not do it." He chuckled, and the sound was cold, venomous. "You think you can resist? After everything you've taken, everything you've done, you are bound to me. Your power, your life, your very soul, it belongs to me." But he leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "I admire your courage. Perhaps we can settle this differently." Before I could react, the lights flickered. Shadows shifted violently around us like living creatures. The congregation froze, eyes wide, unaware of the tension building between us. He raised his hand. "Come closer," he said, "or do you want to see the true cost of defiance?" My body froze, but something deep inside me, fear, anger, guilt, a mixture of everything, pushed me forward. I stepped into the circle of light around him. "You've seen the truth," he said, voice low, almost whispering, "but you do not understand it. You think power comes without sacrifice. You think miracles are free. You are naive as you always were." "I've seen enough," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "I've seen what your rituals do. I've seen the people's lives crumble. I have felt the darkness inside me because of what I did. I will not let you control me or anyone else ever again." He laughed, a low, menacing sound. "Then you leave me no choice. You will either submit or be destroyed." The shadows around him shifted violently, rising from the floor, moving like tendrils, reaching for me. My heart raced. Every instinct screamed to run, but I stood my ground. I remembered something. The prayers I whispered the night the water receded. The power of truth, of love, of pure intent. I closed my eyes, whispered the words again, louder this time, pouring every ounce of sincerity into them. The shadows recoiled. The air grew heavy, almost choking him. His calm demeanor faltered for the first time. How?" he cracked, anger rising. "You fed on people's lives. You think that gives you strength, but it is not power, it is corruption. And I will not let you continue." The shadows collapsed around him, writhing, twisting, then vanishing entirely. The congregation blinked, confused, unsure of what they had just witnessed. He stumbled back, wide-eyed, as if he had been struck. "You cannot escape," he hissed, his calm now broken, his voice trembling. "No," I said, stepping closer. "I belong to God, not you, and I will make sure no one suffers like I did." He glared at me, his lips curling into a sneer, but I saw it, fear, just for a moment. He retreated into the shadows, muttering curses under his breath, but I knew he wouldn't touch me again, not now. I walked out of that church into the night, chest heaving, body trembling, but free. The air outside felt clean, alive, real. I had faced the darkness, stared it in the eye, and I had survived. And for the first time in years, I felt hope, real hope, that the cycle could end.
After that night, I didn't sleep for days. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow made me think he had returned. I'd close my eyes and still see his face, calm, powerful, almost inhuman. But something had changed. The air around me felt lighter. My dreams were still haunted, but the whispers were fading. Slowly, the dark hold over me began to break. I went back home to my mother's village. The quiet helped. The wind rustled through the tall grass, the smell of wood smoke filled the air, and for the first time in a long while, I felt safe. I spent most days in prayer, trying to undo the spiritual knots I had tied myself into. One morning, as the sun rose over the trees, I sat by the river, the same kind of place where my journey into darkness had begun. I stared at my reflection in the water. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize myself. I wasn't the same man who had once knelt in front of Prophet Emmanuel, desperate for power. I was tired, yes, but I was awake. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. My heart raced. I turned sharply, but it was just a woman from the village. She smiled softly. "Are you the man who came from the city?" I said. "Yes, why?" "They say you worked with a powerful prophet. Is it true?" I hesitated, then nodded slowly. "It was true, but I don't anymore." She looked at me curiously. "Why not? People said he could heal, that he could change lives." I stared at the river again, the sunlight bouncing off its surface like shattered glass. I said, "He could, but not through God." The power was real, but it came from darkness. The woman frowned, unsure what to say. I continued, my voice low but firm. "When he washed people's feet, it wasn't just cleansing, it was a ritual. He used that moment to bind them, their trust, their souls, their energy, to feed his altar. Every miracle was a transaction, every healing was a sacrifice, and those who stayed long enough, they lost something of themselves." She crossed herself and whispered, "Jesus, have mercy." I nodded. "That's why I left. I saw what it did to others, and to me. But many are still trapped, still blinded by his promises." The woman stayed silent for a while, then said softly, "Then maybe you were meant to survive so you could warn them." Her words lingered in my mind long after she left. Maybe she was right. Maybe everything I went through, the deception, the fear, the darkness, was meant to open my eyes so I could help others see. That night, I lit a candle and prayed longer than I ever had before. Not for miracles, not for power, but for peace, for myself and for everyone still under the spell of false prophets. As I prayed, a strange calm came over me. The air felt still, almost sacred. I heard the river outside, flowing softly, as if whispering forgiveness. And then, I felt something lift. The last bit of darkness inside me, the guilt, the shame, the fear, it left quietly, like smoke fading into the night. I knew deep down that I was free, truly free. Since that day, I've told my story wherever I can. Some people don't believe me, others do. But I don't care about who doubts, I care about who listens. Because what happened to me still happens every day. There are men standing behind pulpits, dressed in white robes, smiling as they hold bowls of water, saying they are cleansing your feet in the name of God. But not all of them serve God. Some serve something far darker. They touch your feet, and while you pray, they whisper to spirits. They take what you give them, not just your offering, but your trust, your peace, your very essence. They promise healing, but plant sickness. They promise blessings, but tie you to bondage. So if you ever find yourself in front of one, if a prophet ever asks to wash your feet for breakthrough, remember me. Ask yourself, who's really being cleansed? Because sometimes the water isn't holy, it's bait.